Good afternoon. Oh, hearty souls that are here today to remind our elected officials what they ought to be doing. My name is David Dutschke. I'm a member of the Kentucky Advocates team of Network, the national organization.
Bluetooth disconnected.
Thank you for being here today. Tell Congress that they must pass a budget that supports our communities and helps human needs. Sorry, okay, yeah. I've got to swallow this. Here in Louisville, I'm on the board of directors of the St. Vincent de Paul Society, and I am on our team at our parish, at our conference parish. We serve people who are struggling to survive in our community. We operate a community kitchen, as you may know, a food pantry, a homeless shelter, domestic violence services, 2 thrift stores, an enrichment center for youth, supportive housing for families and adults, and provide housing for veterans. The work that we do matters to 600 individuals we provide shelter to, and hundreds of others that access our other services. In addition to the hundreds that we help through our parish outreach and home visits that we do at our parish level through St. Vincent de Paul conferences. We rely on federal funding to help keep our doors open. I also work with Clout and Network to change the systems that help create poverty for working persons on the margins, to build a world that I know we can have. We can build a world where people aren't forced to rely on emergency housing services, but have stable housing, a world where people can have reliably good and healthy food to eat and access to medical care, and where seniors can remain in their homes, where police work with our community with trust, where guns are controlled, and where all our young people can read. Okay, but we're here today because Congress is derelict in its duty. We're here today because our legislators are kicking the can down the road for 45 days. They get paid for 365 days while citizens get delayed. So I'm going to invite Sister Emily TeKolste from Network to tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Thank you, David. I am so grateful to be here in Louisville. I am Sister Emily TeKolste. I am with Network, a federal lobby for Catholic social justice founded over 50 years ago by Catholic sisters to promote racial, social, and economic justice in our nation. The most basic responsibility of Congress is to fund the federal government. Over the weekend, our government almost shut down because certain members of Congress were blocking a budget from passing. We are relieved that members of both parties in Congress averted a shutdown by coming together to prioritize the common good. And it is the work that we've already done that got us here, the work that you all have already done. People across the country making noise, calling on their House representatives to pass a clean continuing resolution to fund the government. They heard our message loud and clear, but our work isn't over. We must keep making sure our representatives hear from us. The funding passed, as you heard, was a temporary measure providing for just 45 days of government funding while members of Congress put together a full budget. And so we are here to declare that Congress must pass a budget that is fair and just, that protects the needs of the people and doesn't attack our immigrant neighbors. We are here because we believe in a world where everyone contributes and everyone has what they need. We believe in a world where the abundant food that we already have is distributed equitably, so that each person knows where their next healthy meal is coming from. We believe in a world where every family has safe and affordable housing. We believe in a world where the beauty of our communities shines forth and we can begin to heal our trauma. And we know we can get there. It starts with our work today, with calling on Congress to pass a budget that prioritizes critical human needs programs and protects our immigrant neighbors. This doesn't have to be hard. We've already had this debate this year. In the spring negotiations over raising the debt ceiling, Speaker McCarthy and President Biden came to an agreement over spending levels in the 2024 budget. It passed with strong bipartisan support in both chambers of Congress. Both sides compromised, and most people agreed to those compromises. All we have to do is pass a budget that funds the government at the agreed upon levels. But members of the House Freedom Caucus don't want to do that. They want to force even deeper funding cuts that will hurt communities across the nation. And so we're here to reiterate the value of federal funding here in Louisville and in communities across Kentucky and across the nation. Congress must protect and expand nutrition access. Programs like the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, known as WIC. WIC supports low-income pregnant people, new birthing parents, infants, and children up to 5 years old with nutritious foods, nutrition education, breastfeeding support, and improved access to health care. Children who participate in WIC live healthier lives and have improved academic outcomes. We must fund WIC at levels that ensure every family who qualifies for assistance gets the assistance that they need. Yes. Congress must fund housing assistance. We are in the midst of a national housing crisis. There is a shortage of 7 million affordable housing units across the nation. Meanwhile, research consistently shows that providing no barrier, stable, affordable housing is the most effective and most cost-effective approach to addressing homelessness in our communities. But housing assistance is not currently guaranteed to everyone who qualifies to receive it. Congress must prioritize funding housing in the federal budget. And federal funding isn't just about ensuring that the needs of our most vulnerable neighbors are met, although that's very important. We all rely on federal investments, from the interstate highway system to food safety inspections. We all benefit from federal investments in healthcare, childcare, and education. And over the last few weeks, certain extremist members of Congress were trying to divide us by pitting people who rely on government programs against immigrants. Their attempts to divide us failed because we came together. We said loud and clear, care for everyone, no exceptions. Care for all communities, no exceptions. There are real threats to our priorities in the funding bills the House is currently discussing. They would cut funding to fiscal year 2022 levels, taking us backward. Here's what's at stake for families in Kentucky. We're talking nutrition assistance for 24,000 women, infants, and children who rely on WIC that is under threat because of funding cuts. We're talking 3,700 children from low-income and low-wealth families who will lose access to Head Start, a critical early learning opportunity that enhances learning and promotes school readiness for its participants. We're talking 10,000 families will face increased housing costs due to the loss of rental assistance at a time when housing costs are skyrocketing and affordability is out of reach for too many people. We're talking programs like the Emergency Solutions Grant that will lose funding that local nonprofit organizations rely on to help address the needs of unhoused people in our communities. The Senate plans to fund these programs up to the amounts agreed upon in the bipartisan spring agreements. And so we thank Senator McConnell and his Senate colleagues for this. Following a historic decline in poverty in 2021 with the passage of the American Rescue Plan Act, 2022 saw a historic rise in poverty as many of the emergency supports for the American Rescue Plan expired. This tells us something important. Poverty is a public policy choice, and it is time that we make a different choice. It is time that we make a choice to end poverty, to support our communities, to provide for people so that all have what we need to survive and thrive. And so we're here to say to Senate Minority Leader McConnell, keep working with your Democratic Senate colleagues in a bipartisan manner. Stay strong and protect the funding that our community needs without dividing us. Congress must pass a budget that funds human need programs that are vital to our communities.
Thank you, Sister Emily. And now we're going to hear from George Eklund from the Coalition for the Homeless. The Coalition for the Homeless exists, as you know, to prevent and end homelessness through housing, education, and the coordination of partner agencies. George?
Thank you, David. So my name is George Eklund. I work as the Education and Advocacy Director for the Coalition for the Homeless. For me, I believe that housing is a right. Like, it is a foundation stone that all of our lives are built upon. Like, it's where we go home after a hard day and eat a pint of ice cream. It's where we get ready for job interviews. It's where we celebrate birthdays. It's where we recharge with our loved ones. Like, it is a critical piece that all of our lives are built upon. And for us in Louisville and across the state, like, this is not an attainable right. You know, I grew up in Appalachia, and my mom worked in special ed, and I saw like that proximate view of what it looks like when a family doesn't have that secure housing. I knew students I went to high school with and middle school and elementary school that they were homeless. They were doubled up in a trailer. Like, these are our fellow citizens here in the state. And you know, what are their outcomes going to look like? What is it going to look like in the future as they try and build their life and succeed and help move our state forward? You know, our community isn't moving forward when we have 17,000 evictions filed each year in Jefferson County. Our state isn't moving forward when, if you're a black Louisvillian, you're 2.5 times more likely to end up in eviction court compared to your white counterpart. Like, we are not moving forward when we have 1,600 people homeless each night in Jefferson County. We're not moving forward when shelter is full by 10 in the morning. Like, we have serious issues, and we need to take ownership over these issues and work together with state, local, and federal government to fund solutions to really move our community forward, and we're providing that basic right to Louisvillians and to Kentuckians in general. You know, what do we need here from social service providers? We need consistency, we need a commitment, and we need an investment in cash to provide these basic rights to folks. You know, I urge Congress to continue working to give us that consistency, to give us that funding, and really help us move forward and meet the needs of our lowest earning Kentuckians here today.
Thank you, George. Next, we'll have an address from a former legislator. The Honorable Attica Scott is a former Kentucky State Representative. She's a former member of the Louisville Metro Council and a community organizer. She currently serves as the Director of Special Projects at Forward Justice Action Network.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It makes a difference that we are here at the Muhammad Ali Center. Where we choose to plant our feet and show up for justice matters. I live in the neighborhood where Muhammad Ali grew up. 32nd and Greenwood is where I live. And when I think about the black women who are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women, we cannot cut crucial programs like WIC. We cannot cut funding to expanding and protecting affordable housing. We cannot cut funding to our basic, not even basic, our necessary human needs. There's a certain privilege that goes with being able to say basic. No, they are not basic, they are necessary. Yes, I am a former elected official, and I know that our budgets are our moral documents. If our morality in this country is so broken that we cannot take care of the people who need us the most, then we need different people to take care of the people who need us the most. I was the only black woman to run for Congress last year. What I can tell you is that our budgets are a racial justice issue as well. Our federal budget is a racial justice issue. It matters who we are protecting and taking care of. I'm here with Forward Justice Action Network, which is a 501c4, because we believe that democracy, like justice, is an action. It is shameful that in the shadow of the 10th year of no formal Voting Rights Act, that we are allowing people to go hungry, that we are allowing people to be homeless. There is enough in this country. There is enough leadership to share, and there are enough resources to take care of everyone. We cannot believe and fall for the trap of scarcity. As I'm sure many of you know, poverty is the 4th leading cause of death in the United States. I appreciate the work of the Kentucky Poor People's Campaign for constantly lifting that up. And there are 1.5 million poor and low wealth people in Kentucky who do not have time for us to play with their lives. There are 1.5 million people in Kentucky who need us to stand up and go toe to toe with the so-called Freedom Caucus. Freedom means something else to me. It doesn't mean what they mean. So they are the extremist caucus. I choose not to use words to make people look good when they're doing bad, when they're doing wrong. The 1.5 million low wealth people in Kentucky need for us to stand up for protecting and expanding affordable housing, child, senior, and nutrition programs, LIHEAP, which I know many of my neighbors in the west end of Louisville need desperately, and to make sure that we are taking care of people like me. When I was pregnant the first time, I needed WIC. For those first 5 years of my baby's life, I needed WIC. Not only that, I nearly lost my mind mentally, literally, because my baby would not latch on and breastfeed. And because of WIC, I had access to a free lactation support specialist. So I'll say it again, 1.5 million people in Kentucky don't have time for us to play with their lives. Congress needs to get to work. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Attica. I'd now like to invite forward my fellow network advocate and team member, Mary Danhauer. Mary is a retired nurse practitioner who served over 40 years in a low-income clinic. She traveled here today from Owensboro to share the story of her community. Congress needs to know that this affects everyone across the state. Mary?
Thanks, David, and thank you all for coming today. As he said, my name is Mary Danhauer. I come to you from Owensboro on the western part of the state, where too many people are struggling also. I have witnessed poverty and its effects on the lives and the health of the people in my town. As a nurse practitioner, I served poor and low-wealth people without health care and some without stable housing. The stress of not having a roof over your head, of not knowing where the next meal was going to come from, and of dealing with chronic diseases, those all put the body, mind, and spirit in dire straits. The body is just not meant to be under this kind of stress for very long. Chronic stress on the body raises cortisol levels, which then leads to hypertension, diabetes, heart attacks, and strokes. Before the pandemic, 140 million people in the U.S. were poor or low wealth. The pandemic made it clear that poverty is a cause of premature death, and poverty is a product of policy decisions. Thus, we call it policy murder. Strong, strong words, but policy murder. Poverty, as Attica said, is the fourth leading cause of death in the U.S., claiming more lives than homicide, gun violence, diabetes, or obesity, taking more than 800 lives a day in the United States. In Kentucky, as Attica said, there were 1.5 million Kentuckians who are poor or low wealth. At our minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, a person would have to work 89 hours a week to afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment. Nobody can keep that up for very long. Between 2019 and 2020, Kentucky experienced a 2-year decline in the average life expectancy. With the ending of continuous eligibility for Medicaid, 302,000 people in Kentucky are estimated to lose their access to health care. We are here today because a few members of Congress want to drastically cut critical support from people who can barely get by. They are willing to shut down the government to get their way. That's only been moved out 45 days. There's a lot of work to be done between now and then. The draconian cuts that just 33 members of the House are proposing will certainly make life harder for many of our people. As a person of faith, I look to the scriptures for inspiration. Isaiah 10 says, "Woe to those who legislate evil, who make unjust laws to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed." Jeremiah 22 reminds us, "Thus says the Lord, do justice and righteousness, and deliver from the hand of the oppressor those who have been robbed. And do no wrong or violence to the immigrant, the orphan, and the widow, nor shed innocent blood in this place." And Matthew 25 tells us, "Truly I say to you, as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me." These are not just faith messages. Our nation's founding documents speak glowingly of the rights of people, making justice a governing principle, and it also states that we are all created equal. The policies enacted by our government over the years work not for justice, but to keep those on the margins of society in poverty, and then blames them for being poor when the system is rigged against them. I am here to bring awareness of the plight of those who are never at the table, whose voice some of our nation's powerful legislators refuse to hear, those who struggle to make ends meet. Our representatives in Congress, on both the federal and state level, continue to cut taxes for the rich while increasing taxes on low-wealth people. While millions of people remain without work, living wages, housing, clean water, food, or health care, corporations and the wealthy are doing exceedingly well. Between 2020 and 2022, billionaire growth grew by $1.5 trillion. That's more than $2 billion a day. Scarcity is the fear that is fed across media today, but it's not true. There is an abundance of wealth and resources to meet our basic needs and to ensure that we all survive and thrive. Taxpayer dollars that are going to the biggest weapons contractor, which is Lockheed Martin, those dollars could hire more than 4,500 elementary school teachers. More than $73 million from Kentucky taxpayers that are going to federal prisons could instead power more than 173,000 households with solar energy. It's time for us to stand up to the greed of the wealthiest few in our nation, to name it for what it is, and join together to make this nation a real example of what it means to care for the least among us. It is the right thing to do. It's the moral thing to do. Congress, keep your promise. Do what we sent you to Congress for, to hear the needs of your constituents, all of us. Pass a moral federal budget. Protect the programs that serve our communities. Help all Kentuckians to not only survive, but thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Good words. And now we are blessed to have with us the Reverend Dr. Angela Johnson. Reverend Angela Johnson is the pastor of Grace Hope Presbyterian Church. Reverend Johnson.
Thank you, David. We are called to love our neighbor as ourselves. Is this temporary government fix doing that? The answer is no. We are called to bear one another's burdens. Is this temporary government fix doing that? No. We are called to act justly, to love mercy and walk humbly with our God. Is this temporary government fix doing that? And that answer is no. As a pastor of a congregation in Smoketown, the oldest African-American community in Louisville, located in one of the poorest zip codes of the United States, I see the effects of poverty in our communities. I see the violence, the fear, and the hopelessness. I see what houselessness, food apartheid, and the lack of adequate health care does to our communities. I see the trauma and the despair. When young adults trying to live on their own can't afford a decent, safe place to live, even with post-high school certifications or a college degree. When parents raising their children or grandparents raising their grandkids have to depend on their school's food programs so the kids can eat on the weekends. It is so discouraging when those who are physically challenged or other-able with a chronic illness or mobility issues, and they can't get where they need to go because of the lack or the cost of transportation, and there's not enough time for us to even talk about the issues of being a caregiver for a loved one. I'm talking about, if you've ever done it, how you're trying to work and take care. Your finances are wrapped up in being a caregiver. We thank God for AARP and the work that they are doing, but we need help. Every month at our food pantry, through our church's partnership with Dare to Care, I see the mental toll it takes on adults who are 60 and older, whose income, according to the 2023 federal guidelines, to qualify for the Commodities Supplemental Food Program is at $1,580 a month. And older adults that this program serves, if you qualify, they still have to buy medications, pay a mortgage or rent. They still have utilities, a phone bill. They have to buy other food. They need toiletries, cleaning supplies, and the other things that we all need to live. And the income of some who qualify for the CSFPP federal program live on far less than that. way less than that. Some at $0 a month to $750 a month. Something has to be done. As a pastor ministering in a marginalized community, I see the weary faces of those who can and do work several jobs to make ends meet, and the ends are still not even close. Plus, there's the realization that there aren't enough hours in the day to work another job. Over the years, our church has received so many phone calls from those in our communities who need rent and utility assistance. They need food and clothing. They need transportation. They just need help to live just and equitable lives. And as a small congregation, we couldn't keep up with the needs of our neighbors. So our church was invited to join with other churches in our area under the Central Louisville Community Ministries Partnership, which is part of the Association of Community Ministries. So together we can help as people of faith, as many families as we can, but even this partnership is not enough. So as God's people, we want everybody to live that abundant life, not just exist. So that means our government has got to do the right thing in this country of abundance that seemingly values numbers over nutrition, budgets over basic needs, partisan politics over people, and corporate profits over a community's prosperity. I don't know about you, but as Fannie Lou Hamer said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So we are calling on Congress to protect and increase the funding of programs for food, affordable housing, WIC, healthcare, and other programs that contribute to the nurture and the well-being of our neighbor and our communities. Because if people of faith, we are people of faith, if one part suffers, all the parts suffer with it. And if one part is honored, all the parts are glad. So it takes all of us working together. So let's make some John Lewis good trouble. We will not rest until there is equity. We will not rest until there is liberty. We will not rest until there is justice for all. So to Congress we say, do the right thing. Keep your promise. You say it with me. Keep your promise. Keep your promise. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Johnson. So, faced with all these numbers and all this need, what are we going to do about it? Well, let's ask Sister Emily if she has an idea.
I always have an idea of what you can do. So, you all should have little flyers. These flyers have a phone number on them. Your homework, number 1, is to call that phone number. There's a sample script on the flyer. Tell Congress, keep your promise, pass a budget that includes funding for essential human needs programs and ensures the protection of families, especially immigrant families, families who are most pushed to the margins by the systems that discriminate. So number 1 assignment, make that phone call. Number 2 assignment, get 2 friends to make that phone call. 2 friends. Everybody can do it. I've got more flyers if you need them to take them home. And number 3, we want you to talk back to Congress in an additional way, in a very public way. So following the close of this rally, Sister Eilish and I are going to be hanging out. We're going to record some videos. So if you can take just a minute to tell us on video why you're here, what programs matter to you, and what you want Congress to do, we would really appreciate. Thank you so much.
All right, this is the wrap-up. It says, share something that struck you from the conversation. Well, we really didn't have a conversation. It was more talk at you. Now you have a chance to converse. But there are 3 words that always hit me in this. Number 1, scarcity. Utter bull jive. Number 2, abundance. Tons of abundance in America. And number 3, greed. It is one of the capital sins we don't hear from the pulpit. Thank you for being here. The work doesn't end. Let's make sure you do what Sister Emily asked. Keep talking to people about this and challenge them when they say we can't afford it. Things like that. It's just mythological. We know those who are most vulnerable in our society, who are already struggling, are going to be more threatened by the actions of a small minority of extremists, and they call themselves representatives. Senator McConnell, thank you for a reasonable leadership. It's time for Congress to pass a federal budget that protects housing, health care, and food, a budget that is a moral document that prioritizes those our society has pushed to the margins. God bless you all. Get to work.